In this lesson, we will be seeing on how do we actually create a repository in Azure DevOps, in GitHub, and in Bitbucket. So we just log into Azure DevOps, dev.azure.com, and we will see how it is actually progressing. Okay, let me cancel all my VPNs. Okay, fine. So this is going to be your Azure DevOps login page, and I'm just clicking on this. Since we have already signed in, I'm clicking on sign into Azure DevOps. Okay, and then I'm just giving my email ID which I have signed in. I am giving my password. Okay, so if you see, this is our project that we have created it, DevOps demo. I'm clicking on this project, and then this is going to be our welcome page for the project. And how do you create a brand new repository? Click on this repos option, and here if you go to the files, if you see, it is empty, so we need to add some code, and it actually gives you three options. One, you can clone from your local computer. Second, you can actually push your existing code. Third is you can import a repository. So we will be seeing an import repository on our next lab, but for time purposes we will just try to initialize an empty repository. So I can just add a readme file, and then depending upon the particular program, like if I'm actually using a Java, I can use Java git ignore. If I'm using a Maven, I can use Maven git ignore, or if I'm using a Node.js, I can use Node.js git ignore. Whichever is possible, I can just use it. Okay, and then I'm clicking on initialize, and if you click on initialize, this is going to be your empty repository with two files that we have clicked in, which is readme file. This is going to be your readme file, and this is going to be your git ignore file, and this git ignore file will be predefined given by the Azure DevOps depending upon the language that you're choosing in. Okay, so in our case we have chose Java, that's why git ignore is created as per the Java files, and this is going to be two new files that is created as part of your repository. Okay, so this is how you create a repository in Azure DevOps. When you wanted to create another new repository, click on the top arrow button, and here you can see click on new repositories. When you click on new repository, you just need to give a repository name, and again a readme file, and then the git ignore file, whichever you wanted, and then click on create. It will create another new repository. When you wanted to import a new repository, click on import button, and then depending upon the URL, whether you're trying to import it from Bitbucket, or whether you're trying to import from GitHub, or whether you're trying to import it from TFS version control system, depending upon that, we will be seeing in our future labs how do you import a repository. Okay, so now we have created an empty repository in Azure DevOps. Now we will try to create another empty repository in GitHub. So I'm just typing github.com, and then I'm signing in with the username and password that I've signed in with my new email ID. Okay, I've signed in, and here there is an option of create repository. I can click on this, or I can click on this plus button. So there are two options for me. I can click on this plus button and click on new repository, and this is going to be the owner, and the repository name is Devops demo. Okay, and then I can give a description of it, and I have an option of creating it as a public repository so that anyone on the internet can see it without username and password, whereas I can create it as a private repository so that only with the username and password people will be able to see it. And here also I have an option of initializing it with a readme file and then a git ignore file, and here also I'm just choosing it as Java git ignore file, and I have an option of choosing a license file as well, which I don't need it over here. So I just click on create repository, and it automatically creates a repository with two files, like how I showed you in Azure DevOps. One is a git ignore file, another one is a readme file. Okay, And here also you have multiple options, like either you can create your multiple repositories. If you want to create another repository, you can click on this plus button and create another repository, or if you want to import a repository, click on this and then import it from some other repositories. Okay, this is how you create a repository on GitHub. Now we will see a same thing on how to create a repository on Bitbucket. So we need to log into bitbucket.org and then click on login, and then here I'm just typing in email ID and password that I have signed in our last lab. Give it some time. It shouldn't take such a long time. Okay,